Today on With the First Pick, Rick, we have a guest. Josh Edwards has joined us here in Indianapolis at the Combine. Anything nice you want to say to Josh before we get going?
Yeah, he actually looks a lot better in person than he does over a Zoom call.
That's nice. We'll take that. Today, we're going to talk about some of the defensive tackles, the edge rushers, the linebackers that worked out. We talked to a few of these players. We'll get to that as well. Some pops and some drops as we like to do. But, Rick, first, we forgot to do this yesterday. That's my fault. How many days until the 2024 NFL Draft?
Well, it seems like we've been here 56 days covering the Combine, but I'm going to go with 56 days, Josh, until the 2024 NFL Draft.
All right, let's get into it. Josh, welcome. Anything you want to say, get off your chest now that you see Rick in person for the first time in a while?
No, the fact that he was nice to me off the jump, I think I'm going to leave it where it is. I don't want to irritate him just yet, so we'll wait a little till farther in the podcast.
And that's a recurring theme. We have people on the show that you treat much better than you treat
yeah,
the guy
I know, but it's getting
with.
around bewitching hour for me. So
this is not a joke. That's right. There have been concerns that Rick might be taking gummies. We'll see how that plays itself out.
Okay.
All right, let's get to it. Pop or drop, Rick, as we like to call it. First up, let's talk about Jared Verse. We'll get your thoughts. We'll get Josh's thoughts. And it's hard to imagine that there's anything to be worried about with what Jared Verse did. The edge rusher out of Florida State had a great season. We didn't get a chance to talk to him, unfortunately, but we've talked a lot about him. Ran a 4.58, had a 35-inch vertical, ended up being almost 6'4" and 254 pounds. Explain to me why anyone should be worried about Jared Verse.
They shouldn't.
Okay.
And if someone's trying to explain to you why they're worried about Jared Verse, then maybe you should go back and watch the tape. And I know towards the end of the season is where he really started to play his best football. If you watch him in the Florida game and those games towards the end, he was a dominant player. And everything you've seen athletically on the tape and the explosion, he was able to perform that live in front of everybody here when they're out there working out as well. So I think he just solidified himself as potentially the #1 edge rusher off the board.
Josh, two of my favorite plays from the 2023 season were sacks by Jared Verse, one against Florida that Rick's talking about, and one against Louisville, in which he used the left tackle as a tackling dummy to throw it to the quarterback on a bull rush to sack the quarterback. Is he your edge one, or do you still have room for wiggle?
So I still have Dallas Turner, although Jared Verse definitely made a strong case today. Dallas Turner, reports still coming in, but had a 40.5 vertical jump, so he's performing well himself here. Jared Verse, I think when you watch his film, he has that power that you look for at the position. The fact that he was able to test so well today just kind of answers any remaining questions that you had about how well-rounded of a player that he could be. And then, like Rick said, he played phenomenal over the second half of the season. So when you're looking at the momentum coming into the NFL, having that momentum, that positive energy that's going to carry him into his rookie season, I think you're looking at a player that's transitioning up.
Do you care at all that Dallas Turner's only 6'2" compared to nearly 6'4" for Jared?
No, I mean, the thing that I was getting ready to drop Dallas Turner because I didn't think he worked out.
I didn't want to bring it up, but go ahead.
But
he
again, it's getting that time.
Had a 40.5-inch vertical. Go ahead.
But they put him in the linebacker class. So that was interesting to me when everybody's talking about is the best edge rusher. And he is athletic when he drops, but he's going to make his money rushing the passer. But they end up putting him in the linebacker class. So
why would they do that?
I think a lot of times teams, especially teams that have odd fronts, they may put him more and see him as a 34 outside guy because of his athleticism and because when he did drop on tape, he was not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a smooth. You looked at a lot of these edge rushers, and then at the end of their workout, then they put him through linebacker drills, and some of them you're like just shaking your head. Why would you even have this guy drop into coverage? But everybody wants to get the answers, so a lot of the times these guys will do multiple positions, and I bet you Dallas Turner, after he's done doing the linebacker drills, they'll put him out there and put him in some edge rush drills so teams compare him to other edge rushers. All
right, well, both young men had great starts to their combine on the field. All right, let's talk about Chop Robinson. And, Josh, I'll ask you about Chop. Ran a 4.48. We all thought he was going to test through the roof. Weighed more than I expected. He ended up being nearly 6'3", 254 pounds, same weight as Jared Verse at the 34.5-inch vertical. So check mark all around. Rick just talked about this on HQ. Sometimes didn't play with the power you want against the run. Do you have any concerns about Chop because he feels like a first-round pick?
I do. I mean, I don't think the film was that of a first-round pick all the time. You want to see somebody that's going to dominate more consistently, somebody that consistently hold up at the point of contact. You didn't always see that on film with Chop Robinson, but the fact that he came out here, showed his athletic ceiling, I think he's cemented himself as a first-round pick, similar to Jason Oweh a couple of years ago coming into the NFL Draft, somebody that had a lot of athletic potential but had yet to reach his potential.
Yeah, and Oweh hasn't really played yet to that potential for Baltimore. And even if you look at Nolan Smith, who blew it out here last year, who Philadelphia ended up taking it, I believe, at the end of the first round.
Right, yep.
And he hasn't really come. But I'm not going to question Chop Robinson and the type of football player he is, because he plays, as we say, Ryan, with his hair on fire. I think he's going to have the initial impact as a DPR, designated pass rusher, and then maybe potentially grow into a better run defender.
Dallas Turner ran a 4.47 as well in the 40-yard dash.
Boy, is that guy a loser.
I'm laughing. Yeah. So 4.47, 40.5-inch vertical. And 40.5-inch vertical is 99th percentile, I'm guessing off the top of my head. That's insane territory, right?
Yeah. No, that's crazy.
What was you had a good vertical, right?
Yeah.
What was yours?
34.5.
Is that for real?
Yeah.
4.6, 34.5?
Yeah.
Okay, here
My
we
brother
go.
ran a 4.9 and a 30-inch vertical, but he had change of direction. I didn't have it.
Right. We just asked you to run a straight line.
Yeah.
We don't need you to change directions. I think you said you were in San Diego camp and you were asked to cover Kellen Winslow.
Yeah, and I knew that I'm probably going to have a podcast career after that.
Even in the 80s, before there were podcasts, Rick knew that podcasting was going to be in his future. All right, so let's talk about the Dallas Turner numbers there. 4.47, 40.5, 6'2", 247. Rick, okay, he's making the case that he's also going to be the edge.
Okay, I changed my mind. I'm going to take Dallas Turner first.
But I think this is a great problem to have if you're picking in the top 15.
Yeah, and I think Verse, Turner, and Latu did enough. We haven't talked about him. He didn't embarrass himself, but he did very well. He did very well in the drills. Maybe the smoothest out of anyone bending the edge in some of the pass rush drills. So I think all three of those will be gone by the 11th pick in the draft.
What's your edge ranking, Josh?
I have Dallas Turner first, Jared Verse second, I believe, and then Laiatu Latu.
Okay.
Well, that's always great to change your order right after these guys work out.
It's totally revisionist history, but
okay.
You asked me now and not 20 minutes ago.
And
so that's
assuming
where we are.
Latu is healthy, how high do all three are they off the board in your mind?
That's a tough question because of all the talent that's there at wide receiver, quarterback. Yeah. I think they're all top 15
Atlanta,
talents.
Chicago, Minnesota, 8, 9, 11.
But Chicago's going to consider a wide receiver as well.
But with the depth of the receiver class, they can swing and get one in the second round that's going to be a pretty good player.
That's going to be a consideration.
These three top edge rushers are probably the most unique, and then it falls off from there. So why wouldn't you take the premium position when you have an opportunity, especially that high?
What if the young man you drafted?
You have a CBS thing. I never got it from CBS.
Here we go again.
Yeah, if it's something he likes and he doesn't have, there's going to be a problem. So you drafted Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter's entering free agency. If you're the Bears, for example, at 9 and the option is to pay Danielle Hunter, what's Danielle going to make a year? 25 maybe?
I think he's going to be between 22 and 25 a year.
Do you do that, and they have cap space, or do you wait and get one of these three guys at 9?
I think those are where you first got to see it. I don't think Minnesota will franchise Danielle Hunter, or they can. But a lot of times you can come in with a game plan after you meet with the agents here.
Right.
Then you go back and you regroup, and then you see everything that happened at the Combine. You may alter your game plan. Well, listen, I didn't know Dallas Turner was going to run like that, or Jared Verse was going to run like that.
Rick Spielman told me he was a loser.
I can get these guys for 5 years, and I can get them at a lot cheaper than potentially going out and paying Danielle Hunter, even though I think Danielle Hunter is a great player.
By the way, breaking news, according to Debo, Peyton Wilson, my brother, because he just ran a 4.40.
He said he was going to run fast on the set.
He did say that. He said it very quietly, and I was like, okay, we'll see. He did it.
Yeah.
So, injury-wise, there are concerns there. He's a little older. Third round?
I think he may pop up there in the second round. I think people were a little bit concerned with, again, the injury and the age. But the way he played this year, I think it really helped himself. There's no question about his ability to run. It's like all linebackers that are usually coming out. They don't know how to use their hands to take on blockers. But he was a great kid when we sit here and interviewed him a couple days ago.
Yep.
And I think that when you run that, which is rare for his size, that helps bump him up. Because you were talking third round, second round. Well, if he was at the top of the third, maybe someone trades up ahead of someone who needs a linebacker, and he ends up at the bottom of the second. But I think he'll be in that second or third round range.
So I'll ask you the same question, Josh, but I also mentioned that yesterday Rick and I did bold predictions, and one of his bold predictions was Edgerrin Cooper, the Texas A&M linebacker, ran a 4.52, and Rick said he's going to be the first linebacker taken and also a first-round pick. So tell me about Peyton. Oh, go ahead. What do you have to qualify?
Potentially sneak in the bottom of the first round.
That's a first-round pick.
Yes.
Top 32.
Yeah, yes, potentially.
That's your bold prediction. So
Yeah.
There's not a potential bold prediction. It's a bold prediction.
Okay.
My bold prediction, by the way, already flamed out. I said 4.5 for layout two lots here in we're running the 4.6s.
Well, that's another $1 I can put in my piggy bank.
Right. Another day in the life. Peyton Wilson and Edge Cooper.
Yeah, so Edgerrin Cooper is my linebacker one. Like him a little bit more than a Junior Colson. Peyton Wilson, of course, has asserted himself in that mix as well. This is not the first year that Peyton Wilson has been fully healthy. He's got a couple of years now. So even though he's got those two torn ACLs, the shoulder injury in his past, now he's got a couple of years where he has shown that he can be healthy. So when you see these type of athletic numbers in the film that he put on tape this year, he's checked all the boxes, and I think teams are going to feel pretty comfortable with him in this draft.
I agree with you on the durability part, but also the wear and tear on two torn ACLs.
Oh, yeah.
That's what's going to be a concern with some teams. It'll depend on what the doctors see, because they can come back and say, yeah, I understand he's been healthy the last 2 years, but the degeneration in his knee, he may only last 3 or 4. Other teams will say, don't worry about it, take him, he'll be a long-time NFL player.
Two ACLs on the shoulders, the same conversation we'll be having at Michael Penix Jr. throughout this process as well. Not going to be running quite as often as Peyton Wilson, but if he's your franchise quarterback and he's not on the field, that's a problem. All right, let's talk about Byron Murphy, a guy who you fell in love with when you saw him on the stage. Great young man. Also,
I fell in love with him in the fall, but even more so
when
on
you
the
got
stage.
to see him, right? Yeah, you met your girlfriend online, and when you finally got to meet her in person, you were even more gobsmacked. But you talked about it yesterday on the podcast. I think his calves are the size of my waist. It felt like when we got to see him walk off the stage.
Yeah, I didn't realize how big he was, especially through his lower body, and I think he had an outstanding workout today as well. And when you can see that guy that is built like he is from the waist down in the thickness,
what does that tell you?
That tells you that he can bend, he can anchor, and he can explode out of that 3 or 4 point stance, and that's why he's such a great football player.
4'8", 740, 33-inch vertical. He did all that at 6 feet 1/2 inch and 297 pounds, which I think he played about 295 as well. So that's not gaining or losing weight to show up here. That's what he plays at.
Yeah, and you don't realize how big he is because he's standing next to a giant on film in sweat. So that's why I think when he came in here, I was a little taken back because I thought maybe he looked like 275, 280.
Yeah.
But don't have him stand against sweat every play because that can be misconceiving.
So, Josh, Byron Murphy was able to work out. Johnny Newton was not at Illinois because of the foot injury, I think is what's hobbled him for the moment, but he will try to work out before the draft. Where's Byron on your defensive line rankings?
He's number one.
Okay.
He has shown an ability to hold up in the run game. He has shown an ability to rush the passer. So he's a little bit more well-rounded than a Johnny Newton at this point in time. Newton relies on his quickness. He's somebody that can get on the hip of blockers, press gaps, and he plays with a high motor. But I don't think he holds up as well in the run game as Byron Murphy does. And to Rick's point, when you see 6'1", 297, you're thinking, okay, maybe he's a little bit on the lighter side. But when he shows up, and you can see his build, his lower body, you feel a lot more confident about his ability to hold up in the run game.
It was fun talking to a lot of the guys we got a chance to talk to, but I especially enjoyed Byron Murphy when I asked him, all right, who gave you trouble as an interior offensive lineman? He said, well, no one gave me trouble. I mean, I usually won every rep, but Cooper Beebe did a pretty good job out of Kansas State. And you spoke with Cooper. What were your impressions of him, the guard out of Kansas State?
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get him on stage. He is a bull in a china shop as a run blocker. I mean, he just blows people off at the point. Good in pass pro. He's lined up and played 3 different positions while he's been at Kansas State. My biggest concern is he a gap scheme fit, which that seems to be the best fit for me. I don't know if he's going to fit that wide zone because of the lateral quickness.
Okay. All right, one more winner, Popper. And I saw him in the hallway walking over here after he'd run already. Braden Fisk, the defensive lineman out of Florida State, transferred from Western Michigan. We had a chance to talk with him. Ran a 4.7, 840, 33.5-inch vertical. He was listed as almost 6'6". I didn't feel like he was that tall, and I'm great at judging height.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're the best.
So he's 5 inches taller than Byron Murphy and weighs 5 pounds less, 292. And he is a high motor, hair on fire guy, to borrow that phrase again. He made fun of you for watching MASH. But as I was walking over here and he had just finished his workout, and maybe he's going back to the hotel, maybe he's done. Are they done after they run? So he's probably going home. I guarantee you when he walked over to the stadium this morning, no one knew who he was. He was getting high fives and hoots and hollers as he was walking back, sort of being congratulated like he just won the Super Bowl. And I think that's indicative of how the rest of the next 56 days are going to play out for him.
Yeah, he probably was the biggest surprise, I think, for everybody here, the way he performed. And everybody knew what type of football player he is because he's a very good football player, but everybody was concerned with the 31-inch arms. But when he has that height, I thought he was going to be a 6'1", 6'2" guy just by his build. But when he ended almost 6'5", I know he has short arms and a short wingspan. But when he talked to us on the stage, he said, I knew I had to do something else to overcompensate for that. And when he talked about his effort, and he talked about beating offensive linemen to the punch, so he gets his hands on them first before they get their hands on him. And usually that leads to success, and we saw that not only on the tape in college, but also down at the Senior Bowl.
Josh, is he a top 75 guy in your mind?
Well, he probably is now with the way that he tested. It's funny that nobody talks about his arm length after they see him run as fast as he did. Just an incredibly high motor player, somebody that won over the coaches at the Senior Bowl with, being traded to the other team on the day of the game.
He was the first trade ever, I think, in Senior Bowl history.
Definitely won over the coaches in that game, but also a year ago, we saw Kalijah Kancey go in the first round. People worried about his arm length too, and it didn't deter anybody from taking him in the first round. So it looks like teams are a little bit less hesitant to take players that might be a little bit shorter as far as their arm length and wingspan.
Kalijah had 29-inch arms, so he's got 2 inches there. Does it matter that you're 6'5" and your arms are shorter? You have a little more leverage as a taller person?
I think it's more tolerable, if that makes sense.
Oh, dude, is that a joke?
No.
I thought it was a tolerable joke. No, you like that one? You can use that one.
All right, it's squirrely time, boys. Let's wrap this up.
People was giggling. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about some guys that dropped and probably wish they had better starts at the combine, but it's not the end of the story just yet. We'll talk about that right after this. All right, we're back. I promise, Rick, we're back, okay? We're going to do this segment. We'll get out of here. Josh has things to do.
Gigi gave us a good thing.
Gigi gave us the let's do it. So let's do it. All right. Let's talk about some guys who dropped and probably wish they did a little better. But, again, not the end of the story. We've seen players come here year in and year out and not perform well. At the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter. But Johnny Newton is on the list. And we just talked about him a moment ago compared to Byron Murphy, the defensive lineman at Illinois. 6'1", almost 6'2", 304 pounds. Why do you have him on the list?
I just think if he's injured, I understand why he wasn't able to work out.
He is injured.
But when all the scouts, all the head coaches, all the GMs, all the coaches walk out of here, the first impression you're going to think is, man, Fisk, man, Murphy, man, I didn't see Newton. So eventually they'll come back around, but I'm talking about maybe at this point because he wasn't able to work out, that he probably went, I wouldn't say not as a forgotten man because he's a very good football player, but everybody's going to be talking about the other two.
Yeah, but maybe does it play in his favor that when he gets to the pro day, that's the last thing you've seen if he plays really?
If he does well.
If he has a good pro day?
If he does well, but still.
Bryce did that last year. You asked him specifically in this chair, why aren't you throwing? And I get it in Bryce's case. He didn't want to stand next to Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, but then he had a really good pro day.
Yeah, and that's a quarterback. But we're talking about some defensive linemen here that are good players. But I'm just saying, you got to stack Murphy and you got to stack Fisk up, two of the outstanding workouts today. But it would have been nice to stack Newton in that as well.
No, I get it. All right, let's talk about Darius Robinson out of Missouri, Josh. And Rick talked about this earlier, and I'm sure he'll follow up. But Darius ran a 4.95 40. Not setting the world on fire when you look at some of the numbers coming in the 4.48s and 4.5s with these edge rushers. 6'5" and 1/8, 285 though, so he outweighs these guys by 25, 30 pounds, and did have a 35-inch vertical. Is he a drop in your mind because of the slow 40 time? He did play inside a lot at Missouri, played outside a little bit, and I feel like his future's probably outside, but maybe that's up to the team that drafts him.
No, I don't think he was hurt too much today. I think he's probably still in a similar range to what we had projected earlier, which is like late round one, maybe he gets higher than that because of his flexibility. He's somebody that can play on the edge with his size. He can move inside in NASCAR packages, get after the quarterback. So I think he's a unique player because of his size, his speed, and what he brings to a football team. I still think he's a first-round talent all day.
My biggest concern wasn't that the football player, but when you go and you don't have a top 10 time at least. So
yeah.
I can understand why you run a slower 40 at that size, although there's some guys that ran fast at that size in the past, but his 10 was a little slow too.
Yep.
Now, whether that was the training or whether it was just a bad day running a 40, because he did blow away everything else and all the measurables, but my point is, when you run that slow, and let's say it gets him out of the first round and maybe the top of the second because of that 40 time, some teams won't care, other teams may care a little bit more, but that could have cost him about $2 million in guaranteed money dropping from the first to the second round.
The old Joey Porter Jr. rule, as I've now taken to call it. By the way, he ran the slowest 40 time among the defensive ends, but also, again, he outweighs him by 25 pounds probably. So you have to take that into account. And, again, there's nothing wrong with his tape, right?
No, his tape's outstanding. The Senior Bowl was outstanding. It's just something that if you're judging today, that was a concern.
All right, let's. I'm going to skip down one, and we'll come back to the other name here in a second. But I'm going to go to Austin Booker because he's an edge rusher as well. He ran a slowish 40 time as well, 4.79 official. He's the edge rusher out of Kansas. We talked to him yesterday, and he has a little edge to him in terms of the interactions and speaking with him. 6'4", 240. I thought he looked a little bigger than 240. So the size and the 40 time are issues, and he was also developmental. Is that fair to call him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and I know, Josh, this is one of your drops. This was one of the kids I was excited to see because of the raw talent there. I know technically he's not there yet, but he flashes an edge rusher. Usually those guys that I've saw in the past like that are built like that, have pretty good combines to just put an exclamation point on, hey, I'm a unique athlete. I know I'm raw, but there's a lot of tools to work with. But the weight in the 40 were a concern.
What do you remember? If not, we'll have Debo look at it real quick. Danielle Hunter's numbers?
Yeah, Danielle Hunter ran, I think, in the 4.5s, 4.54.
Okay.
And I think even DJ Wanham was in the 4.6s when we drafted him in the 4th round.
And Danielle probably weighed 245-ish?
He was probably around 245, 250.
Okay, all right, okay. And obviously he's had it weight since then. Were you big on Austin coming in? 4.57 for Danielle. So, yeah, that's
How about
moving.
that Rolodex?
Yeah. That
10 years ago.
That you can remember. Were you high on Austin coming in as a developmental player in terms of the upside that we've sort of talked about in the last few days?
Yeah, I was, because you look at the length, you get excited. I thought he was going to get out of the blocks a little bit quicker, run a better 40 time here. 240 was very concerning. I didn't think he was 240 when I watched him on tape. But he's essentially got 1 year of playing experience after transferring from Minnesota. Was kind of a rotational player, used him situationally at Kansas. I really thought he had a lot more potential to show here today, and we just didn't see it.
Yeah, and that's probably one of those kids that probably, if they would have went back another year, put another good year on tape, he would have definitely been higher on most teams' draft boards.
Lance Leopold, is he the coach?
Yes.
He'll probably call you so you could next time make sure Austin Booker doesn't leave. What was I going to say about Austin Booker? Let's say this pro day, instead of a 4.79, he runs a 4.65. What are you saying after that?
Well, at least it's acceptable that, hey, this guy has something, but those numbers don't speak explosion to me. And
even 4.65 doesn't blow your hair back.
That gets me a lot more excited than what he ran here. But at 240, you want to see the explosiveness, and I don't think with that time and some of the test results we got today that it translated to what we've seen on field. Now, he's still a very good football player with upside, but he's just so raw. But you wish he had more uniqueness as an athlete, especially coming out of the testing today.
All right, let me ask you this: would you take Nolan Smith at the end of the first round or Austin Booker in the 3rd round? I'm thinking similar weights, 240-ish, and obviously one's much more explosive than the other.
Yeah, Nolan Smith ran 4.3s last year.
But I mean, you saw his tape at Georgia, and there was questions about what he did well.
Yeah, but another guy runs a 4.3.
So you're automatically taking him over Austin Booker?
Yes.
But I'm saying you get Austin in the 3rd round. You get Nolan in the bottom of the 1st.
You may be getting Austin in the 4th round now.
Okay. All right. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. Nolan Smith was one of the top performers last year, was fantastic. Obviously, we didn't see that too much at Philadelphia this year. Now, possibly moving forward, depending on what happens with Hassan Reddick, that's a player that could have a much bigger year too. But I think with what we saw today from Austin Booker, there's definitely some hesitation. So you kind of have to go with a more sure product in the first round.
You guys don't listen to the words you say when you're like, don't get caught up in the numbers. I'm trading up into the first round to take Austin Booker, just to spite both of you guys.
All right, it's getting a little squirrely now. It's time to wrap up the day.
All right, let's talk
Film
about...
crew's tired. I'm tired. You're dragging us on. Let's go. Josh is in the limelight. He's all fresh.
Yeah, he's fresh as a daisy. All right, Leonard Taylor, Josh, I'll come to you first because Rick and I talked about him a little bit on HQ. Didn't have the year we thought he was going to have in 2023. Then he ran a 5.1 240, which isn't the end of the world at 6'3", 303, but a 30-inch vertical defensive tackle out of the U. I thought he played better year before in the 2022 season. 2023 wasn't quite where we expected it. How do you feel about his performance?
Well, you're exactly right. His 2022 season was much better than 2023. Would you agree with that? So we're all in agreement with. Yeah. So
I'm going to agree with it just so we can keep.
So we can move on.
Going.
Yeah. I don't blame you. But the fact that he came out here and he did not test better than what we had expected of him. When you look at his profile as a high school recruit, one of the best in the country, very highly recruited. 2022, you get a little bit excited about what he could become because it is a big position of need in the NFL. It's tough to find players that are that big and move as well as he was. 2023, take a step back, and then to see what he did today, it's the opposite of what we were talking about earlier with Jared Verse and the positive momentum that he's established. Taylor just has a lot of negative momentum right now, and it's kind of tough to buy into his potential.
At this point, you don't want to be spiraling downward.
Yeah.
You want to be going upward.
And T'Vondre Sweat, who weighed, I believe he came in at 360, is that what you said?
366.
He ran a 5.27, and you don't care about that part, right?
No, because he was moving for a 366-pound man.
I heard it took him 300 yards to
Now,
slow
it wasn't
down.
Jordan Davis-type numbers, but it was good enough for his size.
He's a good athlete. Debo spoke with him yesterday, and Debo said he broke his hand when he shook it just by virtue of shaking his hand. So make of that what you will. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the players we got a chance to talk to. We'll get Josh's thoughts on these players as they prepare to work out tomorrow, and we'll do that right after this. All right, Rick, let's wrap this up so you can go take your nap. Today, I'm going to mention some guys we talked to. Give me your thoughts on just how they came across to you and just the interview setting, and I'll get Josh's thoughts on what he wants to see from them tomorrow when they take the field, the tight ends and the defensive backs. Let's start with Brock Bowers, tight end out of Georgia.
Great kid, but a little bit soft-spoken. Not the same thing. The impression you get when you talk to him to the type of football player he shows on the field.
Do you care about the soft-spokenness?
No,
I didn't get that sense either. We know what kind of player he is, Josh. Anything you need to see from him tomorrow? I think Hawkinson ran in the mid-4.7s. Didn't affect where he was drafted. What are you expecting from Brock Bowers?
I think he'll test well. I don't know that he needs to test well just because of how well he played on film this past year. We know what he can do. He's a special talent that can stretch the field. So I would be surprised if he was disappointing tomorrow.
One thing about him that stuck out is, and he talked about it when we spoke with him today, was that most guys that are going to go that high in the draft, once he had that ankle surgery, they shut it down because they want to get prepared and they know they're done and they're going to. But he came back, and that told me a lot about what that kid is made of.
TJ ran a 4.7, by the way. I've been informed by Debo.
Okay, you were a 10th off.
I was. All right, next up, Terrion Arnold. And last year we were here, Josh, and of the Alabama players, no one loved Rick more than Henry To'oTo'o, linebacker now with the Texans. Terrion Arnold has displaced Henry To'oTo'o as the favorite person in the Rick Spielman fan club. He is now the president. And not only that, and I was telling Debo this earlier, he has an edge to him that reminds me a lot of Sauce Gardner just in terms of the way he carries himself. I don't know if he's going to be that type of player, but he thinks he's going to be that type of player, and he was special in the fall.
Yeah, no, I know him, so I'm going to be a little biased here. I know that he is full of energy, very quick-witted, knows what it's going to take to play in the NFL, and truly believes the confidence that he is the best corner in this year's draft.
Tell the story that your conversation with him midway through the season, and you were hard on him and how he took that conversation?
So I went down there and I spoke with him right after the Tennessee game. He got hurt in the Tennessee game, couldn't finish. I think he had a concussion that game. Wasn't playing very good in the first half of the year, and they're telling me this kid may be looking to come out. Inconsistent with his technique, inconsistent tackling. And then I just told him, I said, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I said, you're making a mistake if you come out. I said, you have to play with more consistency. You have to start creating turnovers on the back end. You have to be more physical as a tackler. And after that bye week, he came back. I think he had 4 interceptions and really took a turn the second half of the year.
And he told you, I took everything you said to me, and I internalized it, and I wrote it down, and I said, next time you see me, what? I'm going to be the player that you're talking about.
And he did. He ended up turning out. So. And then I tried to do that with Ryan, and it just you never internalize anything I say. No. You just tell me to go sit back in the corner.
I call my wife and usually crying. Josh, where's Terry Arnold on your list of cornerbacks?
So I had him number 2 behind Quinyon. I love what I heard about the constructive criticism, the way that he was able to take it and apply it. I did also hear that he called Rick his GOAT GM of all time. So
Rick
I do question his judgment a little bit. But a really good player that's only tapping his potential at this point because he's still relatively young.
Top 15 for you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's number 1 for you, I know. All right, Ben Sinnott, another guy that you fell in love with early, and you reaffirmed that love when he walked across the stage. The tight end out of Kansas,
Kansas State.
Kansas State, thank you. Another great young man.
Yeah, no, he was very impressive when you put the mic in front of him. Very well spoken, very focused. You can tell he has some edge to him, and the one thing that he truly loves to play the game of football, and he described to us why he does that. So I can see everything that he said with the mic in front of him today and why that translates to the field.
Josh, his Rick's comp for Ben Sinnott was Sam Laporta, and he seemed to be all on board with that. What do you think of that?
That's a pretty good comparison. I mean, that would be coming off the best season we've ever seen from a rookie tight end. That would be a pretty lofty
praise.
Saying but
I said he reminds me a lot of Sinnott from a comparison coming out of Iowa. Now, hopefully he has that same success Laporta had. But he had a lot of similar traits that I thought Laporta had.
Yeah, because he is well-rounded. He's, accomplished as a blocker, but he's also got soft, strong hands, makes catches in traffic, and can get upfield. So I do see the similarities. But if he's anything like Laporta, we'll be talking about him next year.
Is he your number 2 tight end?
Number 3. So
Who's number 2 for you?
He's not going to like it. It's Jatavian Sanders.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think mine's Theo Johnson out of Penn State.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah,
so we got a little discourse here. But yeah, I'm very excited to see what he's going to do because I do think he's going to help himself this week.
And Ben Sinnott had told teams when they asked him who he thinks he's most like, has mentioned Sam Laporta. So.
Well, remember Laporta came here and blew the workout out. So Sinnott has to do the same thing when they work out tomorrow.
All right, Rick, Tebow and Forbes, we're going to do one more name. I'll let you choose the name. You can do Ennis Rakestraw, Tyler Newbern, or Cam Kitchens. Which one do you want to talk about? They were all great.
Rakestraw. I love
Let's
Rakestraw.
do Ennis Rakestraw Jr., the cornerback out of Missouri. We talked to him and said, do you remind us a lot of Devin Witherspoon in terms of being undersized in quotation marks but knocking the snot out of people? And he leaned into it. He was quietly confident, I think is a good way to describe him.
Yeah, and the one thing when we talked to him about, and everybody was asking him in the team interviews as well, hey, you were very animated after it looked like your safety busted a coverage and you went up there, and he said, no, that was my fault. He took it off the safety even though it was probably the safety's fault. And the other thing, do you remember who one of his favorite players was?
Oh, my gosh. Night Lane Train, Josh.
Wow.
That's a deep cut.
He's going way back.
So not only is he a heck of a football player, he's a football historian as well.
Yeah, we've talked to some players that, I don't want to say shirk responsibility, but we're willing to say that wasn't my fault. Ennis owned it, apologized to the safety, even though it sounded like it was the safety's fault, and went back out there and they regrouped. Where's Ennis Rakestraw for you? Is he a first-round pick? Is he on the border for you?
So he's not a first-round pick for me. I don't love him as much as everybody else, but that Missouri secondary is one of the most fun to watch this past year because I love Chris Abrams-Drain as well.
I do too.
Both of those guys, they're physical, they compete. they both need to rein it in a little bit at times because you see them get a little bit too juiced up at times. They'll grab jerseys downfield, stuff of that nature. So want to see those guys kind of pull it back in a little bit at times. But the fact that they are so physical, the fact that they do, study the game, take all that constructive criticism to heart, all that stuff gives you confidence that they're going to be able to transition to the next level with relative ease.
Rick, I ask you this every year. Does it feel like these players as they come through here are more polished than they were 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, they're all polished because they all work at these facilities. The agents are always polishing them up for the interviews, getting in front of the cameras and how they're going to interact with the media. So before all the agents got working with these guys, it was amazing some of the things, how these kids came in.
Yeah.
And you got the raw version of them, I guess would be the best way to put it.
And now, and you know this, when you're with the Vikings, all these schools have their social media teams following around with cameras. When did the cameras become a thing, like the social media side and the video side for the Vikings? How long ago was that? 5 years or longer?
No, Minnesota's always been kind of on the cutting edge of that.
When I think technology and cutting edge, Rick Spielman's the first thing that comes to mind.
I will tell you this. One of my jobs as a general manager was the chief editor for anything that went out on Vikings.com.
And that's because you're a micromanager?
No, it's because I didn't want to give anyone a competitive advantage.
I see. You wanted to make sure they weren't getting shots of practice or whatever.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's it for today. Rick has to go take a nap, and honestly, I'm not going to be far behind you.
I'm not going to take a nap. I'm going to bed.
Oh, okay. A little. Let's hope, as Pete Prisco is concerned, that you wake up. Okay. Let's make sure that happens. It was great having you here, Josh. Great to see you here in Indy. For Ryan Wilson and Rick Spielman, that's Josh Edwards. Tomorrow, the quarterbacks. We'll talk quarterbacks, and then we'll talk how these guys worked out on the field tomorrow night on the podcast. See you guys in.